Today we are going to get wonky with wonky Polaroid quilt blocks. Hi, I'm Kim Jamieson-Hirst of Chatterbox Quilts, and today I want to show you how to add a wonky border around a Polaroid quilt block. So if you're not familiar with Polaroid quilt blocks, this is what they look like. So I've got a little one here. So you've got a fussy cut motif in the center, and you've got these white borders that mimic a Polaroid photo. Now, it's always fun to add some additional borders to it, especially if they're wonky. I'm all about the wonky and improv look. And I want to show you how to do it. It's really simple, and it's a great way to use up some leftover jelly roll strips or leftover binding strips. So I'm talking 2.5-inch wide strips. So let's talk about what you would need to do this. First, you've got your Polaroid block, right? That's pretty simple. Then you need to have some borders for the side. So these are, as I mentioned, 2.5 inches in width, and they're actually 4 inches in length. Then you need something for the top and the bottom, 2.5 inches by 8 inches for both of those. So you're going to sew the two sides onto your Polaroid quilt block, and then sew your top and bottom. And you're going to press them out towards the borders like you would normally do. Then comes the magic. So first, let me go and get this one sewn together so I can show you how to easily change this to this. Now that I've added the borders, the block looks like this. So it looks pretty normal, right? It certainly doesn't look like it's on an angle or tilted like this one is. And by the way, I misspoke onto my dimensions here. The top one and the bottom one should be 2.5 by 7.5, not 8 inches. My bad. Forgot that seam allowance, right? So the next step is to do some trimming. So for this one, it's really handy if you have a square ruler. Now I'm using a 6-inch ruler. If you wanted to add wider borders, you could probably use a bigger ruler, but the 6-inch ruler seems to work pretty well. So what I want to do is got a diagonal line, and I want to run that on a diagonal through the Polaroid quilt block in the center. And I would really like the borders to be pretty much equal on all sides. So there's a couple ways you can do that. First off, you could actually take a ruler and you could draw, a diagonal line here, and that would give you your center spot. And then you could use the center of your ruler here, which would be the 3 by 3, and line it up. You've got that diagonal line going, but that center, where the 3-inch ones meet would be, wherever you'd mark the center on your block. I do it a little bit differently, so it's up to you which works best for you, but the first thing I do is, get that diagonal going through, and then I kind of eyeball it. I do that a lot in my quilting. It usually works out pretty well, but I often measure as well to make sure it's as close as I think it is. So I'm going to put that on there, okay? And just as a note, you can see that my ruler, I'm trying to get this kind of square for you, you can see it, the ruler is tilting here. It's going from the left up towards the right. When I trim it, the block inside here will be tilting in the opposite direction. And you'll see what I mean when I'm done. And that can be important depending on how you want to put these together and how you want these, the angle that you want these borders to be on. But right now, let's do some measuring. So I've got my other ruler here. And what I actually did is I went from the corner of the Polaroid block, that white part, and out to the corner of my ruler. And that's about 2 inches. I think you can see that there. Hopefully you're not getting too much glare. And you can see it. And then I did the same thing at the next side. So that's again about 2 inches. If we're off a little bit, like 1/8 of an inch or something, you're not going to notice it really. So another 2 inches and 2 inches. Okay, so the point is it doesn't have to always be 2 inches, but you want it to be the same distance out from each of those corners on the Polaroid block to the edge of this square ruler that you're using to cut. Okay, so if you have a different size block, or a different size ruler, I should say, it might be, 3 inches or 2.5 inches or whatever, but you want that same distance to be out on all the corners. Okay, I think you understand what I mean. Okay, so having said that, I'm going to cut this. It's now going to be a 6-inch square. So here we go, deep breaths. And could I have cut this bigger? I could have for sure. Let's just see if we can get this off here. There we go. This is where a rotating cutting mat really comes in handy. Try to get that seam cut there. There we go. And last one is here. All right. Those can go in my crumb fabric area. So now, oops, there's my little pig. There he is. There's my little pig. So there he is. So you can see now, if I take this off, easier to see on my cutting mat on my table. So if I line this up here, okay, you can see, here's my square block, but you can see that my little Polaroid quilt block in the center is now tilted. So I've got two of them tilted. So you can see both of these are tilted going from the right corner up towards the left. Even though when I put the ruler on, the ruler was going from the left corner up towards the right. So that's what I was saying, where however you angle your ruler, the block is actually going to be tilted in the opposite direction. All right, so this is kind of fun to do. As I said, it's a great way to use up leftover jelly roll strips or leftover binding strips, anything that's 2.5 inches. You could maybe get away with 2 inches, but I always like to be safe, and there's a little bit extra fabric waste, yes, but at least I haven't ruined my block, right? So there we go. So the one thing this does is it increases the size of those Polaroid blocks by quite a bit when you're using this size of, this width of fabric. So that's kind of nice if you want to put them into a quilt, because it takes a lot of these little baby blocks to make up a quilt. If you make them a little bit bigger, that's a little bit better. You could continue on. You could add some more strips around here and maybe tilt it the opposite way. So you've got kind of a, tilt thing happening within the block. So that could be fun as well. So you could keep building these blocks up until they're quite a bit larger. One other thing I wanted to mention here is you've noticed that I've used the same fabric all the way around. You don't have to. You could use all different fabrics if you wanted to. That'd be a really fun effect, especially if you were making a quilt for a child, for example. Give a real whimsical look to it as well. Now, what can you do with these blocks once you've created these little tilted blocks? What can you make with them? Well, I've got lots of ideas for you. But first, I want to say thank you and a big shout out to my Patchwork Pal members. Those are people who are in my Patchwork Pals YouTube membership, and for a very small monthly fee, they get lots of different perks, including early access to my videos. Now, if you're interested in supporting the Chatterbox Quilts YouTube channel and becoming a Patchwork Pal member, just click on the join button below any of my videos. You can get all the details and even join us today. Now, what can you do with these blocks? Well, I've got some ideas for you that I've mocked up in EQ8. Now, I mentioned to you that you could create the blocks tilting in different directions. So you could do that. You could make half your blocks tilt to the right, half your blocks tilt to the left, and then you could just put them together in rows. Maybe you want to have them, let's say in the first row, the first block is tilted to the right, second block tilted to the left, third block tilted to the right, and you can see where I'm going with this, alternating them as you see in this quilt here. Continuing with that tilted theme, because that's what this is all about, you could actually do the top half of your quilt with all of them tilted in one direction. Let's say tilted to the right, and then have the bottom half of your quilt with the blocks all tilted to the left. And if I was going to do that, I would probably put a plain piece of fabric in the center to kind of divide them up, right? So it's not quite as jarring when they start going in the opposite direction. Now, what about tilting them in alternate rows? So row 1, the blocks are all tilted to the right. Row 2, they're all tilted to the left. Row 3, they're all tilted to the right. You could do these just without any sashing, or you could add sashing in between each of the rows to kind of divide them up a bit and again decrease that kind of what is happening with the blocks effect. So those are some ideas for what you can do with these kind of wonky Polaroid quilt blocks that are tilting in different directions. Now, I've talked about how to make this block, but I didn't really talk about the Polaroid block, did I? So if you're wondering how to make that, don't worry, I got you covered. Check out this video that explains all the details that you need. And for more helpful quilting information, be sure to go to my website at www.chatterboxquilts.com.